Welcome to Encounter Wargaming. Today we're going to be discussing Psykers and psychic powers. More specifically, we're going to focus on human Psykers and the various types of them. As usual, I'm Jay, and welcome to Warhammer 40k Metaphysics 101. Psychic powers, sometimes referred to as sorcery or magic, is a general term for the energy of the warp focused into a spell or an ability. There are those in 40k, as we discussed last time, that utilize the energies of the warp in order to gift themselves with superhuman abilities and extraordinary powers. These beings are generally referred to as Psykers. Due to the fact that these beings draw their power from the very stuff of chaos itself, they are constantly in danger of possession by demons, being corrupted by the ruinous powers of chaos, or just simply going insane from the overwhelming horror that comes from trying to control the energies of the warp. Most sentient races in the galaxy make use of Psykers and psychic abilities, with very few exceptions. Humans and Eldari most notably, but orcs and Tyranids also possess Psykers of their own, though these behave much differently than the human and Eldari Psykers. For humanity's perspective, Psykers have been a steadily increasing phenomenon since prehistory. Regardless of the fact that they've always been among us, Imperial records don't show any record of Psykers prior to the 22nd millennium. The fact that Psykers are becoming more and more common amongst humanity on a galactic scale has led many to believe that this mutation heralds a new stage of evolution for humanity, to slowly become a more powerful psychic race, much like the Eldari. Now, I've divided the following video into a catalog of types of Psykers that we find in the 41st millennium. Today we'll discuss the various types of human Psykers and save the alien ones for next video. So let's take a few minutes and go through each type one at a time. Hopefully, this will give you a better idea of what Psykers are and what they're capable of. The Imperium of Man makes use of many different kinds of Psykers, despite the prevailing view across the galaxy that Psykers are evil and dangerous. The proper answer to this is that unchecked and undisciplined Psykers are dangerous. Some are actually quite useful. In fact, the Imperium could not operate how it does without them. So, as you'll see as we go through these types, why that is. The first we'll discuss is Astropaths. Astropaths are probably the most essential Psykers to the operation of the Imperium. The only Psykers that may be considered just as important are the Navigators, since the Imperium would not be able to function efficiently without either of these two types of Psykers. Astropaths throughout the galaxy basically form an interstellar communication network. It is their job to transmit messages across the vast distances of space between stars. This is possible because psychic messages are not subject to time and space, hence a message can be sent to the other side of the galaxy in but an instant. Astropaths are one of the many types of Psykers called by the Black Ships that gather Psykers from worlds across the galaxy. The point of these black ships is to collect Psykers from across the Imperium and bring them back to Holy Terra. Once they've arrived on Terra, the Astropaths receive intense training from the Scholastia Psychana, which is the educational arm of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, which is the organization that sees over sanctioned human Psykers. Under their tutelage, they undergo a ritual known as the soul binding. This is a painful process for most young Psykers, since they do a literal mind meld with the Emperor himself. This grants the Astropath a fraction of the Emperor's power, as well as allowing the Psyker to have better control over their abilities. This also grants them enough power to transmit messages from one end of the galaxy to the other. This does not come without issues, though. Most who undergo the soul-binding ceremony suffer many physical injuries. The most common of these is the loss of many of their senses. In most Psykers, the ocular senses are what are damaged. The majority of astropaths either have their eyes burned out during the soul binding, or at the very least have their eyes turn a milky white with no pupils, either way resulting in lack of vision and blindness. Many also take so much damage to their bodies that they can go from a strong young man to appearing like a frail old man. That being said, many of them have short lifespans as a result. The Navigators. Navigators are a special type of Psykers, since they are technically not even really Psykers in the way that other types are. Their ability is psychic in nature, but they usually do not possess any other psychic abilities like precognition or the ability to perform psychic attacks, for example. Instead, the Navigators almost always possess a third eye in the middle of their forehead. This eye allows them to see both the currents of the warp and, more importantly, the light of the Astronomicon. This allows them to guide Imperial vessels while traveling through the warp, hence the title Navigator. Navigators can live in approximately 400 or so Terran years. The plus side of this is that their powers increase as they age. This means that the Navigators that have been in service to the Imperium for a long time are even more valuable than younger ones. Unlike other forms of Psykers, which just randomly appear in various human societies, the Navigators are technically a form of abhuman strain that is believed to have been engineered back during the Dark Age of technology. Basically just to make warp travel safer and easier. Since the Navigator gene is passed on genetically from generation to generation, they have developed an elite society of their own within the Imperium of Man. All Navigators throughout the Imperium are descended from a group of noble families on Terra called the Navis Nobilite. As you can guess, their ability makes the Navigators an important part of the Imperium in the sense that warp travel would just be insanely difficult without them. This affords them a rather luxurious life in comparison to most Imperial citizens, much less other Psykers. The Navigators, in conjunction with Astropaths, is the only way the Imperium can maintain cohesion across an insanely long distance between stars. Without these two types of Psykers, the Imperium could not function and would surely collapse under its own weight. Sanctioned Psykers. Not all Psykers brought before the Adeptus Astrotelepathica are used as Astropaths. Many are groomed for use in the ranks of the Astra Militarum, or the Imperial Guard. These beings are known as sanctioned Psykers. These Psykers are deployed in battle in order to use their powers as a weapon against the enemies of the Imperium. Sometimes they are even employed as advisors for Imperial officers, since they can often foresee the future or intercept psychic messages from enemy Psykers. Even if this is the case, these officers quite often take these Psykers' advice with suspicion, due to the fact that sanctioned Psykers are quite vulnerable to chaotic influence and the perils of the warp. Every time a sanctioned Psyker uses his powers, he puts himself at risk of losing his mind, being possessed by a demon, or even exploding from an overload of warp energy. These factors not only attract the attentions of demons, but also regimental commissars. If the Psyker displays any kind of chaos taint, a commissar will not resist at putting a round of his bolt pistol through the Psyker's skull. This has led to sanctioned Psykers being known throughout Imperial regiments as bolt magnets. Primaris Psykers. Those sanctioned Psykers that manage to survive not only the threat of demonic possession or having their brains blown out by a commissar, but also the deadly battlefields they get thrown into, get to return to the Adeptus Astrotelepathica, where they'll get put through even more intense testing. If they survive this next round of testing, they get to return to the Astra Militarum as Primaris Psykers. A Primaris Psyker is taught how to harness psychic power from other lesser sanctioned Psykers, and use it to strengthen his own. The sanctioned Psykers in the Primaris Psykers regiment will form a coven of sorts, from which the Primaris Psyker can gather and harness enough psychic power to augment their own abilities. This can make the Primaris Psykers' weapons more deadly, improve the protection of wards and protective fields, as well as making their predictions of the future much more accurate. Even though these Psykers have paid their dues and developed their powers despite all odds, they are still magnets for demonic influence, which also makes them magnets for our Commissar's bolt pistol. The Librarians. More powerful than any of the Psykers we have mentioned so far are the Librarians of the Adeptus Astartes. Librarians have many advantages that other human Psykers don't. First of all, they're Space Marines. This means they have much stronger willpower and discipline, more so than any normal human at least. This also allows them to avoid losing their minds as easily from demonic influences that they have to endure. They are also much better equipped than other human Psykers. Not only do they wear power armor and have the best weaponry the Imperium can offer, just like any other Space Marine, but they also have a psychic hood and carry a force weapon. The psychic hood is an arcane device used to amplify a librarian's psychic power, while at the same time protecting the wearer from enemy psychic attacks. Appearing as a metal hood that raises from the backplate of the librarian's armor, it contains a system of interwoven crystals that protect the librarian from enemy Psykers and demons. The force weapon can take the form of a handheld blade, such as an axe, a sword, or a spear, and these weapons are only useful in the hands of a Psyker. It allows the Psyker to channel their power through the blade, making them exceptionally deadly to large monsters and demons that would normally not be affected by conventional weaponry. Force blades contain powerful devices known as psi-convectors that are usually crafted to the bearer's specifications. Often, they're even created by the bearer himself, which helps the librarian to conquer the first hurdle of wielding a force weapon, which is attuning himself with the weapon, to avoid causing danger to himself, to his fellow battle brothers, or to their allies. The powers a librarian can unleash on the battlefield are far superior and more powerful than that of any other human Psyker. They can unleash devastating psychic torrents upon their enemy, they can enhance their own or their battle brothers' physical prowess, and they can even foresee the future in a much more accurate fashion than any other human Psyker. The Grey Knights. Most chapters of Space Marines recruit Psykers for their Librarius program, but there is one chapter of the Adeptus Astartes that recruits nothing but Psykers. We're talking about the 666th chapter of the militant arm of the Ordo Malleus, the Grey Knights. As mentioned earlier in the video, demons are able to possess Psykers and or use them as a gateway into the material universe. They do this by preying upon human frailties and emotions. Since the Grey Knights are specifically created to fight demons, not only do aspirants have to be Psykers, but they also have their memories erased before beginning the process of becoming a Space Marine. As if the process wasn't intense enough, they not only have their memories taken from them, but they also undergo even more rigorous mental conditioning than normal Space Marines do. This better enables them to resist demonic influence and makes them the Imperium's best defense against chaos incursions. Since the Grey Knights experience such an intense recruiting process, they are constantly confronted with the horrors of the warp, and not only are more resistant than other Space Marines, but have also learned to shield themselves from the sight of demons in the warp. This is done by reducing the amount of psychic energy that flows through a Grey Knight's mind. Doing this will, of course, lower his abilities to perform psychic attacks, but it's also an invaluable tactic when trying to not get noticed by demons. Since every battle brother of the Grey Knights is a minor Psyker, squads all combine their gifts together in order to create devastating psychic attacks. Those who prove themselves exceptionally disciplined and demonstrate their psychic mastery, even more so than normal Grey Knights, become Grey Knight librarians. Due to the nature of their training and the simple fact that Grey Knight librarians have to prove to be highly disciplined and powerful, this makes the librarians of the Grey Knights even more powerful than a librarian of any other given chapter. So that's a brief look at the various types of Psykers that exist throughout the Imperium of Man. Next time we'll get into Xeno-Psykers and their many types. I want to finish laying the foundations for future discussions, so we'll stick to types of Psykers for now, and then we'll move on to gods and demons and all that fun stuff. If you like this video, please hit the like button below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so that you don't miss future content. If you want to help support our content, check out our Patreon link. It's also in the description below. For as little as $1 a video, you can support everything we do here, and it gets you a whole bunch of perks as well. If you aren't into that and just want to help us out with a couple of bucks, then check out our Spreadshirt page, also linked in the description below, and get yourself some sweet merch. I look forward to our future discussions on metaphysics, so make sure to comment below, and we'll see you at our next encounter.
Like a monkey in a rocket on his way back home. Okay. Scratching his head upon a milk crate throne.